right, ladies and gentlemen, it is my great pleasure to bring you another episode of The Climb, the StarCraft II podcast focused on the blue collar, middle league players. I am your host, Will, aka Lord Cranial.
Hello, my name is Dan. I go by Captain Hoppa. Each episode, we will dive into the ups and downs of the Diamond Ladder experience while searching for those secrets to get good.
Yeah, we're just two normal players who are just working on climbing to that next rung, and we are super excited to bring you this week's episode. Today, we're going to be talking about goal setting, very important aspect of your StarCraft II experience if you plan on getting to that next rung. But before we get into that topic, Dan, I have a question for you. How's the ladder been, buddy?
Pretty good. Pretty good.
Yeah,
Um,
glad to hear it.
I don't know where to start. I think like yesterday was one of these weird days where I felt like I had two Terrans back to back do like goofy one base builds versus me. And I just kind of sat there and did nothing exciting and was able to just hold, defend, and crush him later on. And I felt very cool. It's always nice. The thing that I think I really enjoyed the most out of it was that like I know in the past that a lot of these builds um I would have lost to merely because of the surprise factor, or merely because of the what the hell is going on factor. So for me to just be like, oh, okay, we're just gonna do this. We're gonna drone this base, and then we'll make some units, and whatever it is, we'll, we should be okay for it, because there is a certain amount of it too. Sometimes like you don't know the exact flavor of the all in you're going to experience. Um, but it was a very wonderful wonderful ability, and I can't tell you like this is also just speaks to the randomness of the ladder, but I had two Terrans back to back games do one base builds against me, and honestly, it's been like 6 months since I've seen a one base build attempted against me. I think maybe less because I had a weird Protoss guy who tried something, but like for a Terran, like it's been at least 6 months since anyone has tried that versus me, and for it to just kind of come out of nowhere 2 games in a row, I was floored, but also I felt very cool in my ability to just kind of shut it down pretty decisively, I will say. Like enough to get a pause no GG out of my opponent. Like that kind of solid macro. You've been macroing well if you get that sometimes. So um, pretty happy about that. I don't know, man. Like the ladder's been a little lopsided for me. Like I feel like I've been getting more Terrans than anything else, and I really just want to improve my ZVZ, but I'm getting Zergs so sporadically. Um, like even in the last 2 days, I've probably gotten like two or three Zergs, and like one of them like insta leaves, and it's like, no, I just want to play. I just want to play ZVZ. Like, this is the one I need to improve the most, and you just don't have control over that, so you just gotta kind of roll with it and see where the session takes you. But um, I don't know. My MMR is in reasonably the same spot. I think I'm still at 3.9, which I mean now that I think about it, is actually quite an accomplishment that I've been able to keep it here and haven't dipped quite as much as I honestly was anticipating. Like super ready to tank. So hey, that's pretty good. I'm pretty happy with that. And just keep going at it one day at a time on the ladder, and it's a weird place sometimes, but I feel pretty good.
Yeah, I think it might be time to get used to those kind of Terran one base plays because it seems like a lot of the pro Terrans have been getting incredibly aggressive recently. So we're probably going to see a massive uptick on, BS like that. But I'm glad to hear that you're happy with your current progress on the ladder. It's good stuff to hear. Um, for your ZVZs, have you considered asking for, other Zergs that you know for help? just to get a couple practice games in since you're not
Oh, sure. I
releasing
mean,
any?
I got some people I can ask. You know, sometimes it's a scheduling thing too, and you know, sometimes it's a timing thing. But yeah, I'm looking, and you know, I like it. I also like it too at a practice partner to have a practice partner who's like a handful of MMR better than me, just because it keeps me honest, you know. Because like I could win a lot of games from you know certain things happening, but those certain things can happen versus a better player. It's just I like I don't know I like the honesty that is provided from having an opponent like that because yeah you can get ahead but like can you leverage that into a win is a much bigger question, and it's a question that like it's the true test, right? It's the true test of like winning the game or losing the game, you know, is whether you can leverage it enough. And a lot of times you know I get ahead and I can just ride that off, no problem. I can coast. I can make huge mistakes and just coast my way to victory off of a good early game or whatever. But if it's a punishing player, I do not have that luxury. I have to maintain the you know top notch A+ rating on my macro army control everything throughout, and I like that. It's painful sometimes, but I enjoy it.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, StarCraft is one of those games where it is possible to make one like big mistake and then completely lose the game. Like it's well within reason for that to happen occasionally. I actually did have a game that actually I'll save that for highlights and lowlights, but
Sure.
um, yeah. So what would you say is giving you so much success in ZVT right now? I mean, if you're crushing like these one base all ins, and I've seen you
Um,
crush a couple of mech Terrans recently. So what would you say is giving you that what would you say is giving you success in that?
yeah. ZVT is one of my strongest matchups. Like in general, like I usually sit around 60% in ZVT. Part of that is because of the Roach opener I do, which honestly I'm trying to get away from because I do think it is, um, it's a little bit of a crutch in a way because I do get free wins from it, but I'm also very confident in my ability to pivot out of it, like even versus a player who um, can read it really well or can prepare really well. Like I'm confident in that, but I also think that I'm giving myself too many advantages in the early game in those games uh, to where I just feel like I want to return to the basics. You know, I want to return to the standard the standard ZVT. Um, and being a Rochi boy in ZVT is great, and I enjoy it. I will continue to enjoy it because I think it's very strong, and it you know yeah it has some pretty big weaknesses, you know, and good players will always know how to kind of punish those. But I enjoy it, you know, and I'm having fun with it. It also makes me pretty good at anti-mech. I had I had a good game versus Shu Yi, like a custom game. Um, yeah, and the other thing too is Helium Bunny was in the lobby and she made the map, right? And she picked Oxide and I was not happy about that. I was like Healy, you just put me in a game versus a mech leaning Terran on Oxide. I will never forgive you for this. But hey, I won. So even more exciting for me that I was able to pull out the W. It's also funny because like I haven't played Shu Yi in like a while, like a long time, and I knew she was more in the mech territory for ZVT, but I'm relatively confident in my anti mech. It's always scary. It's never like when you're winning versus mech, it's never enjoyable, but I feel like I know the steps I need to take. You know what I'm saying? Like I still know that I can take one fight and lose the game, or you know I can be out of position in one place and lose the game. But I know the checklist that I have to go down to eliminate the mech from the battlefield. You know what I'm saying? And so, you know, I played a pretty good game versus Shu Yi. I was pretty happy with how I played. You know, hey, there were some errors and stuff, but again, I know Shu Yi is very scary at mech, so I was happy to take one map and on Oxide, no, no less. So I'll I'll take it.
Yeah, it's I'm actually kind of surprised that you're wanting to move away from the roach style, even though you're having a lot of success with it and having fun with it. Like I know it's typically a more aggressive style, and Terrence will probably tell you it's some kind of cheese. But I don't know. I feel like
Yeah, so maybe I should clarify. So the thing I'm trying to move away from is the early roach aggression. So like the 5 roach opener. I'm still potentially going to make roaches and smash with 1/1. That's still in the game plan for a lot of it, but I'm trying to do it off of a more normal quote unquote start. So even yesterday it was cool because I opened pool first every game, but I didn't put a roach warren down just to be like whatever. And it went pretty well. And but like I still want to do like the 1/1 roach push here and there. There is a part of me that also kind of wants to maybe revisit Hydraling Bane, just because it's a very mechanical unit composition, and the priorities you have for that kind of composition, it's different. It's similar, but it's different, right? And you have to really be on top of the injects. You have to really be on top of constantly making lings. You got to, have a fourth base mining. All of these things that like are good to do and good to practice. Um, and I used to do that every ZVT. So I think I should at least revisit it a little bit because I think it'll help my mechanics, and I think it'll just help, creep injects, queens, all that fun stuff.
yeah, for sure. You didn't really mention ZVP all that much. How are you doing there?
It's okay. ZVP, it's like I don't know. I think the matchup is. I'm starting to feel like it's a little stale, because there are a lot of ways for me to play it out, but the best way and the easiest way is a queen walk. Um, and there are still I think the thing in ZVP that I'm really focusing on is I'm trying to be flexible, and I'm trying to go in with an expectation to react to my opponent, right? And oh, I see a Stargate unit produced. Okay, time to queen walk. That's my reaction. It's very simple. It's very straightforward, but it's like, oh yeah, this is what we do. Um, and I think that flexibility is good, but you only see a handful of different openers, and it's fine. Like there's still always stuff to improve on, whether it's upgrades and getting to hive, and even if it's like I'm not queen walking, I have made the decision just to be like, okay, well, I might not have a great plan for this game, but we're gonna make a lot of drones and then see what happens. So it's going well. I don't know. ZVP has become less of a priority for me, and I'm just thinking about my play in general. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, that makes sense. I mean, with the way the matchup looks like it's going, it's gonna stick with kind of a Stargate opening for Protoss, and usually like some kind of aggression or Queen Walk coming out of the Zerg. So I feel like that actually would be a pretty good place to practice your mechanics more rather than have to think about the actual matchup. So I think
Yeah,
that's
and the other thing I'll say is that even the Queen Walk itself, like yeah, it is an all in, but it also is. There's a lot of refinement that can be done on it because normally when I do it, I float about 1,600 minerals, and I have about 18 larvae sitting at home doing nothing. So there's definitely room to improve it and to improve the transition out of it if you get an opponent who has a really good natural hold. Um, but I'm not obsessing about it, the way I was previously. I'm just kind of, I don't know, man. I'm just trying to be better.
I'm just vibing in the matchup for right now. Don't mind me.
Yeah. And
But
this might be a Zerg thing too, where it's like, yeah, I go in kind of loose. I go in kind of without huge expectations, but with, a couple things in mind that I might do, and then just see how it goes. Because I think good Zerg players have to have that kind of flexibility, and um, you have to adapt, and you have to look at it and figure it out. It's a puzzle to solve. Every Protoss is a mystery box waiting to be opened.
I mean, the mystery box thing I definitely relate with, but Nah, as a Terran, I'm just like, I have to have a very strict regiment of what I'm going to do. And
Yeah,
based on what I see is going to change this regiment, and I have to have these things at this timing or I'm going
yeah,
to die.
yeah, yeah. And you know that's that as a Terran, you know you're a little bit more at the mercy of the build order, right? And the mercy of add-ons finishing or whatever, you know. And it's different. So I understand that, you know, I have that luxury of being able to go inflexible, but it's also like it's its own skill to go in with without a huge plan, but with a sort of plan, you know?
Well, I mean, it's its own skill to be able to react to the information appropriately and on time. So I wouldn't
Yeah.
say that I feel like loose is a bit of a. It's an odd word to use because there's nothing really loose about it. Like you still have to have these timings in mind, and you have to be able to see what the Protoss is doing, react appropriately to it. I feel like at least watching you, it seems like it takes a little bit more skill than just like I'm going to kind of do whatever and it'll be fine.
Yeah, well, I mean, hey, that's maybe that's just how it feels to me because it feels to me like I'm going in with no plan other than make a lot of drones and fill in the pieces later. Like that's it. That's it. And honestly, it's not that bad. It's working pretty well.
Oh yeah, that's good to hear, man. Do you want to go ahead and get into highlights and lowlights?
Sure. Let's see. What should I start with? Well, we'll start with the low light. So this was I was doing a practice game with Brad, and Brad's a much better MMR Protoss than me. So, you know, I didn't expect to win a lot of games, but I was going in to, you know, give it the old college try, and you know, Brad's prepping too. So, I'm always happy to help people prep for their tournaments. So, um, it was it was funny because Brad, like, this isn't the first time we've practiced, but he was like, I'm gonna do the maps I don't like, because it's, you know, best of seven or whatever. So there's a chance that you'll play the map
Ooh,
you hate
ooh,
when it
ooh.
means the most.
Don't get don't if Sappho happens to hear this, let's keep the details to a kind of a minimum.
Yeah. Okay. Well, anyways, I played a game on Beckett, and I decided to teach Brad a lesson because I think he vetoes Beckett. Whatever. So I 12 pull him because I'm like, he needs to learn that this is extra scary on this map. And you know, hey, it worked. It worked pretty well. I know Brad's had a lot of practice with the 12 pull defense, um, and I felt like I had a great start. I forced out a lot of pylons. I was really annoying with the lings. Very happy with the damage that I did, and I when a 12 pull ends and you know you've done enough, it feels very good. Like you feel very confident in your position. You know what the Protoss is capable of doing uh, in return, but you also know that you don't really need to be afraid of it if you're far enough ahead, right? Um, so I leveraged that advantage into a very nice queen walk, which arrives very quickly on Beckett. Um, and it's going great. There's not a whole lot of angles to pick from on Beckett, so you know I push into the third, I smash the third. Um, I'm pretty committed, so we keep going up the ramp up towards the natural. Um, we do okay, you know. He slowly and steadily, like it's one of these things too, where um, the longer the queen walk takes to kill the natural, the more of a chance that that void rate count is just going to go up and up and up and up. And Brad did a really good job. He dodged all my biles. He kept the void rays safe for the most part, and you know he was able to save the natural. Um, and you know I'm at this point where it's like I've been committing to an attack for like a minute and a half, and now I have to be like, oh, I need drones in a layer now, like because there's also like 12 void rays flying around now, which is a very scary number. So I have $1 million in StarCraft money, and I dump it all into spores and queens and late because again I've been committed this whole time. I still know I did a lot of damage on the queen walk. We killed the third. We killed some stuff at the net. We killed a lot of army. I feel good about it. But Brad is a great player, and Brad was able to lock it down and retake his third and fourth, and just you know straight hardcore disruptor carrier void. uh, which is basically a unit comp that is impossible to attack into. If there's any amount of disruptors, you cannot walk up to them and expect to have a good time. And it felt bad. It felt bad because I knew I had such a good start. I think that's the most heartbreaking thing about it, is because I knew enough about the game situation to know that I was ahead. And props to Brad. He knew this as well. Like he knew that he was behind, and he also knew that the only thing that would keep him in the game would be Disruptor, Cannon, Void. And it's painful to experience this as a Zerg, but the reality, and it will happen again probably. So I'm okay with that. But I was close. We were close. We almost had it. We almost had it. We just couldn't finish it. The other thing I will point out too that was a big bummer in this game. So like when you do the Queen Walk, right, and then you lose all the stuff on the other side of the map. Then you go back to your own bases, you start injecting, you start making queens, you start doing all this. You basically start over, right? Um, and then I look at the mini map and I see the third base is still there, and I'm like, oh my god, I forgot to kill the third. So, uh, pretty terrible, because then it's like, okay, well now he's not even a two base Protoss, he's a three base Protoss. Um, uh, but the one thing I did notice is that I actually did kill the third. I just forgot. But Brad, being the player he was, while I was sieging his natural, he still had a probe down there, and he re-put the third nexus. So he was able to recover a little faster. And I thought I just didn't kill it. So like that also like kind of like, oh god, I forgot to do the one thing that like you're supposed to do with this attack is at least kill the third. Um, but he put it down fast, and even just that detail helps him catapult back into the game. But yeah, I was close, but no cigar.
Yeah, I've played enough with Helium Bunny to know that the moment disruptors hit the field, you can no longer walk up to that Protoss army. And if
Yeah.
you do, you're asking to get your ass kicked.
Yeah, and I
Um,
think I did try one or two follow up. Like maybe we did enough, and we can do it. But I shouldn't even try. But live and learn.
no, see, for me, it's always like, okay, that was a second disruptor shot, third disruptor shot. Okay, there's not a fourth one. Oh, there was a fourth one. All right, well, GG, I guess.
Yeah, yeah, no, definitely.
But Brad's an incredibly strong Protoss player. He's just an incredibly strong. He actually made Masters fairly recently. I don't know if he's still in Masters or not, but he definitely has the border. So props
Yeah,
to him.
yeah,
But I guess the most important question to ask is, did you learn anything from that match?
yeah. I gotta queue up queens when my push is dying. Because here's the thing too. When you're doing a push like this, if it's going great, it's good to make lings. Just dump your minerals into lings. Lings will come in the reinforce, and it's usually pretty scrappy at that point, anyways. By the time the lings show up, but at a certain point, those lings need to stop, and you need to go back into drones. Um, and you need queens to inject. And I think that's probably you should probably get the queens first, honestly. Like, because the reason the float is so hard to get rid of is because you typically aren't injecting, and you just don't have an ability to dump minerals that quickly. So if you're dumping them into lings, it's not that big of a deal because you're still committed to the attack, and the lings are still relatively valuable in those situations as long as that chunk of your roach ravager queen is still alive. Um, but I just got to queue up queens, man. If I had queens standing there, even if they weren't injecting, it's a million times better than having zero queens and the desperate need to start a layer. So it's like I have like 14 void rays on his side of the map, which I know are gonna eventually float their way over here. I want to make three queens at a time, but I also want a layer. So if you had the queens, you could maybe get the layer. Like it's just I'm tunnel visioned. I'm trying to kill him. Like I'm super focused, and that's definitely my takeaway is queue up some queens. Any amount of queens would be great.
There was a second there where you were saying to queue up units, and my brain short circuited. I'm like, wait a minute, queuing. Oh, that's right, queens. Queens are the units you guys queue up. Right, right. But yeah, that's actually interesting, and that's something that I actually struggle with a lot as Zerg. I never. I never quite have enough queens. I never know when to start and stop making them. And then there's also like transitioning between like making a ton of zerglings for defense or to keep pressuring and then to switch over to drones. I also get
All right.
supply blocked a lot.
Would you like some Zerg coaching very quickly?
Yes, we can do that one day.
Keep making queens until you have way too many of them. What that is, who knows? Who
Who
knows?
knows? Who knows?
It could be 12, could be 8, maybe 16 is too many, but honestly, 16 queens, it's not that bad.
That is really probably is not that bad. Queens are really good. I'm just gonna spread more creep. That's all.
Yeah. Yeah, they don't cost you no larva. It's fine. It's fine. Just make them. Just make them. But yeah, no, it's one of these things. You look back at your base and you're like, "Man, I wish I had some injects to help me spend this money." And if you don't, you don't, and you just gotta suffer. And oh well.
Well, I mean, I can definitely relate to that. At least part of that. Usually, whenever I play TVZ, I like to play this like multi-pronged style or like this very micro-oriented, like one push into the Zerg. And suddenly my attack gets cleaned up, and I don't expect it. I go back to my base. I'm like, oh, I'm missing a fourth racks, a fifth racks, a factory, a fourth base, 10
Yeah.
supply depots. I don't haven't taken my gases. This is a mess.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, live and learn, right?
Yeah, live and learn. I'm trying to think if there's anything else I could really ask about that match. Actually, yeah, I really don't have anything. You're very
I think
succinct
that's
and
I think
yeah,
that's pretty good.
yeah,
I'll go into
and
my highlight, which I was very happy with. Um, so this was a ZVT I played, and again, I was doing the non-roach early roach warren, so I still planning to make roaches at like 66 drones and break stuff with that. But um, basically, what happened is I scout a blue flame opener, which again, not the most common thing to see, but you see it every once in a while. And I say, great, I'm gonna make roaches anyways. This is fine. Um, However, this particular blue flame opener arrived much earlier than I would have thought. And I had like two queens and like three roaches, which is not really ideal for dealing with that. Because four blue flame hellions just burn drones. Like you blink your eyes and all of your drones are gone. Um, so he dives in, he gets I don't know 16 kills, something like that. And this is early. This is early in the game. Um, So, I say, okay, well, we killed the Hellions, so we don't have to worry about that. Let's just hold down the drone key and see if we can hang in this game or not. Um, and I was very convinced I was going to drone for as long as I can, and then follow up, scout the third base, and then leave. That was my whole plan. My whole plan was to be like, well, let's just see. But here's the thing: I do this, so I hold down the drone key. It's also one of these pushes where like you start making drones when the Hellions are still alive because you know that you have to start spending your money into drones to recover at all. So like it was one of those like, oh, this is bad. We need drones already. And so we're droning. I'm very light on units. I have a small amount of roaches, a couple of queens to for defense. I think he gets like even like 5 or 6 more kills for another handful of Hellions, and I'm not feeling great about the position. But then when I go to scout, he doesn't have a third base. And I don't remember what the game timer is, but it's like 7 minutes or something like that, probably. And I'm like, oh my God, there's no third base at all. Like, I expected to see it maybe like just landing or even like already landed and like 8 SCVs being like shifted over to it. But there's no third base. So I say, all right, cool. We're chilling. Uh, and we make a lot of roaches. I think he was going for a mech composition. It was very tank heavy. Oh boy, like starting a mech game after early economic damage is the worst, by the way. Like it's you just feel so powerless. Um, but eventually, give it a couple fights. I think he pushed me once or twice, and I did some counterattacks. and we clean up a lot of tanks, and eventually, yeah, we crush the third base, and we push up to the natural, and the Roach Ravager prevailed. A lot easier than I would have imagined, to be honest. Like, um, and I think the kicker. So this is the kicker that I realized after the game is that in the replay I realized it was a one base blue flame build, not a second command center in sight. Like I had no idea. I just assumed there was. Like I opened pool first, right? So like I expect to a certain degree a high ground command center from certain players, just like, oh yeah, it's fine. You just put it up there. Um, and there was no command center, which explains why it felt earlier, which explains why I took so much economic damage. But also no second command center means, yeah, I can lose 18, 20 drones and it means nothing. I have three bases injected. Like it was fine. And we just held down that drone key and we got back to a decent economy, and we steamrolled him. Really fantastic.
Nice. Well done.
Yeah, and hey, I think someone in my chat was mentioning this, and I totally agree. Where it's like it's the type of Terran who like does a lot of cool drone killing, and then is like, why isn't this guy leaving the game? And then has to like go back to their base and like put down a natural and shit, and like do all this stuff like monumentally later than it should have been. And again, I didn't even know you could do a one base blue flame build for like any like why like like I didn't know that was a thing, but I guess it's a thing. So I took a lot of damage. I recovered. I rallied, and we crushed him.
Yeah, Blue Flame is one of those holdovers from Wings of Liberty. That's an ancient build. That's from the old text. We almost never mention those anymore. But also I've definitely been that Terran before. Like I've sat
Yeah,
there and like killed a fourth base and just like, why isn't he leaving? I don't understand. Do I have
yeah,
to make my own third now?
yeah.
But yeah, that's awesome to hear. So in terms of economic damage, how much do you actually do? Like, was it a fairly significant amount, or did you like
Oh yeah.
pretty much? Okay.
Don't get me wrong. I gave it my best. I gave it my best shot. Like I A move like the five drones close to the Hellions to get that little wrap on them, and I try to pull the rest away. But Blue Flame, man, it's like two volleys and all of your drones are dead. So like he can dodge, and I had again I had a couple roaches. I didn't have very many lings, but again, lings die in one volley, so it's not even really worth it if they're getting that upgrade that early. But I think the first round I lost maybe 14 or 15 drones, and then
God.
the and then he did like a follow-up attack with like another two or three, and I lost maybe another five or six. So, and again, this is so early in the game. This is ludicrously early for this kind of damage to happen. But if your opponent only has one command center and no economy whatsoever, uh, you can definitely recover.
Yeah, I mean, one base this just will not cut it. It almost never cuts it in Legacy of the Void. It seems like you're going to be out in less than 10 minutes usually if you don't kill
Yeah,
your
well,
opponent right there.
well, and it's also like I've had one base where it's like they get like three tanks really fast, and then they have some other stuff that they can kind of put under the tanks and poke around or whatever. But Hellions are never like, this is a killing unit. This is a harass. This is an annoying unit. This is a my eco is gonna be dead, but it's never the killing blow. It's always the weakening blow, So it just made me kind of laugh, and it's also one of the reasons why I assumed that he was doing the quote unquote regular two base version, which is still an aggressive opener, and you can still get a lot done. But I just assumed that he would have a base. I gave him a lot of respect on having a natural.
Yeah, sometimes it's just the weirdest things you see on ladder. It
Yeah.
kind of this feels like an appropriate analogy, but usually what the Hellions are supposed to do, even in like a two base blue flame attack, is the Zerg is kind of like a leak, and what the blue flame is supposed to do is just it's like a finger against that leak, and it's supposed to just kind of keep it from doing much. This is like taking out the piece that is leaking and then like replacing it and then patching over it and then just hoping that the patchwork that you did holds together. But it sounds like the patchwork failed and it kind of just crumbled and the flood came in.
Yeah. Well, it was one of those things too where like he did this opener and then his follow-up to this opener was like a couple more Hellions. And I was kind of like is does he think he's going to like damage my economy more? Like like it's also one of those funny things too when like two Hellions dive into my third base and I have one drone there. And I'm like, "Yeah, you picked the wrong base." Like I remember how much damage you did? You think that I'm going to have drones at this base? No
They're
way.
still dead. What are you doing?
But
That's
yeah,
really funny that the follow up was more Hellions though.
yeah,
That's
yeah, and honestly, it did damage. Like it didn't go for nothing. I mean, I was still kind of happy with the trade, but it kind of told me a little bit about the strategy of my opponent, where he was like, "I'm gonna kill drones until you get frustrated and leave," and I'm like, cool."
that's the most dejected oh cool I've ever heard.
Yeah, well, it's the same when you're living it in the game.
No, yeah, I bet.
But yeah, I was very happy with that game, and I learned something new. Just learned about a one base blue flame build, and also learned how many drones I can take, how many drones I can lose versus a one base. I think those are valuable pieces of information.
Yeah, so do you think that build is something that you'll face again on ladder though?
Probably not. I mean, maybe in like another 8 months. Like,
I think
but here's the thing. I will say the one thing I was very happy with is I got the scout off on what it was before it happened, um, which is not necessarily a forte of mine. I tend to rely more on indirect scouting, but I saw the tech lab on the factory going very early, like surprisingly early, and I was like, oh yeah, I forgot to say this. I made a spore because I was like, is this a widow mine meme? Like because I was like doing the math in my head. I'm like, what even is on a tech lab this early that is that annoying? And then eventually I saw a Hellion pop out and I was like, oh okay, I get it, I get it, I get it, I get it. But I did make a spore, which was just kind of like a panic moment. But again, a lot of these builds, it just relies on your opponent to freak out and panic. And I almost did it, but it's fine. We we persevered.
Yeah, it's always nice to win those games whenever your opponent is just trying to get you to leave.
Yes, and I definitely felt that from my opponent.
Yeah, absolutely, man. Well, congratulations. You've got another potential build locked away in the old brain.
Yeah, yeah, it's good. All right. Well, I think that does it for me. Um, how how's your ladder been going, buddy?
It hasn't been bad. Um, I feel like I've stagnated a little bit. Um, like I haven't had time to play as many games as I've wanted to,
Mhm.
and I feel like my MMR floor has not moved much. Like
Yeah,
the ceiling has kind of moved around a little bit. It's like it goes from 3.5 to 3.6, 3.7, then back down, then back up. But the floor has been kind of remaining the same, and I've been kind of looking at that and thinking, this isn't good. Like this needs to actually start moving up because I'm constantly falling back down to 3.5, and there's no change in that.
yeah,
Um, which is part of the reason why we're going to be talking about goal setting tonight. It's
sure. Nice tie-in. I like it.
yeah, I so I've kind of gone back and I'm trying to, well, for starters, I'm trying to take more notes after my games. Like, I'm still kind of not going into replays as much right after a game, but I try to at least before starting up my ladder session or after I've finished my ladder session to go into replays and see if there are like any notes that I can take or like any big mistakes that need to be rectified. Um, I've been starting to do more practice off stream, and that's primarily just like going into empty cups customs and practicing build orders to make sure they're a little bit more crisp.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Um, the plan is eventually to, reach out to practice partners and get the practice rounds going again. But I mean, yeah, for the most part, ladder's just ladder. Ladder's just ladder. And I'm kind of feeling a little frustrated with the stagnation. Um, every once in a while, I'm just kind of frustrated with a ladder session. It's just like I was just at 3.5 and I'm back at 3.5 again. But
Yeah.
it's not bad. It's not bad.
Do you feel like there are certain hangups in certain matchups that are giving you more trouble than others, or is it just
And right now, it's not even matchup specific. I mean,
yeah,
it almost feels like it's across the board. Um, and what I feel like that kind of points to is just I'm not getting the necessary reps in right now.
yeah,
Like if I look back at a game, I can see like, oh yeah, I did this wrong, or I can even see like in game, I'm just like I'm not really controlling these units the way I should be, and it's in TVZ when I'm having to micro against banelings and also macro at home. It's in TVP whenever I have to control a widow mine drop and still macro at home. It's in TVT whenever I get one base pushed or I get one base pushed with a build that I usually am pretty successful against. So all of these things that I'm kind of struggling with. And again, it's only like I'm only kind of struggling with it. It's not like
yeah,
these big like overarching issues. Like it's just like it's little things and I'm just like I don't understand why I can't get it together quite well enough to deal with this. I used to be able to do this pretty well. And also before I was practicing a lot more.
yeah,
So, yeah, I feel like I'm just not quite getting enough reps in throughout the week and it's kind of stagnating the skill level.
yeah. Well, I feel like this is also kind of sometimes a diamond thing where it's like you have the knowledge on like what you should be doing. But I think a lot of it too is like I am struggling to be physically capable of doing these two things at once. Like because it's like, oh yeah, just don't tunnel vision on your drop. And it's like, okay, like I know I'm not supposed to do that, but like actually not doing that is very challenging to do.
It is so difficult. It's so hard to not tunnel vision on it cuz I mean, part of it is that, you know, you've been successful with that tunnel vision. You've been very successful, like, going in, killing a dozen probes, and then all of a sudden, opponent's just like, well, shit, I don't have an economy, so I guess I'll just leave. But then,
Yeah.
as you keep going up the rungs, all of a sudden, opponents are just like, oh, well, I can pull my probes away, and you're not going to get any damage done. Or, oh, you killed 12 drones. Oh, that's a pity. I'll just make, 24 more and not care that you did that. And what winds up happening is that then you've got issues at home. And I know that I have issues at home, but still, every single time I go into a game, I wind up tunnel visioning on these little things. But what I've been trying to do a little bit more is just, and this is actually something Sappho was teaching me, but like every time, either like before I'm about to do something big or like just after doing something big, just go home, do macro cycle, and then go back to it. And
Yeah.
I've been told this so many times by so many different players, and I'm still to this day struggling with it. It's so hard to not get that tunnel vision.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I feel the exact same way. I mean, it's the same thing in Zerg for injecting, right? Like injects have to go off every 30 seconds, right? If they don't, it gives you problems down the road, right? And even if you're doing Lingbane, which is like one of the most micro intensive roller coaster thrill ride, one or two mistakes and you can completely botch it. You still got to inject your bases before you dive in. And same thing, man. I just as soon as I get the lings in my control group, I'm like, all right, let's go, let's fight. Like, and hey, man, that kind of stuff in StarCraft, that's the most adrenaline producing. It's the most fun shit you do. But it's also like if you want to win or like you want to be competitive, you also have to be like, all right, well, I'm done looking at my medevacs. Time to ignore them. Um, it's something that like uh, I definitely relate to in ZVZ because ZVZ in Roach Wars, if you're like comfortable in the fight, like you look at the fight and you instantly go, easy. I immediately look away. Immediately look away from it because there's no purpose for me to look at it. Um, but it's hard. It's so hard to do that, and it's so hard to tell yourself to do that. So I totally get that, man. And but it's fun. like
Yeah, that's
it's
that's
fun.
the
It's
biggest
fun to attack, you know?
that's the biggest problem is that that's where a lot of my fun in StarCraft II comes from. I mean, maybe maybe some people have more fun with the macro and then they kind of really screw up with the micro. I mean, it's a real balance. It's a real balancing game between, doing the stuff that you love in each match and then doing the stuff that you have to do in each match. And I'm not
Yeah,
saying like, macroing isn't fun. It is, but I have more fun and better memories of doing like these little micro things. Like if I go
yeah,
in and I kill like an entire mineral line with a mine drop, I'm going to remember that instead of, like queuing up SCVs and putting down
yeah,
barracks and, making sure that everything's going to come out on time.
yeah. I mean, good macro is it's satisfying, but not nearly in the same way. It's certainly satisfying when you do it like correctly or like, you hit your 2-2 right right on the nose when 1-1 finishes or something like that. Like it's satisfying in those kind of ways, but it's never the same thrill as dropping into a base and destroying everything and leaving a trail of destruction. Like that's the best, man.
Yeah, I've been actually trying to get into that mindset of getting satisfaction of just getting a big ass army, hit a 2-2 timing, and then just try and crush my opponent. Just steamroll them as hard as I can.
Yeah.
And there is something that is fun about that, and there is something that is enjoyable, and it it feels almost less stressful in a way. Like
Yeah.
I'm still, just like I have to get this 2-2 timing out on time. It has to be at this time and then I can push across. But it's not like, oh my God, I have to split these Marines and then I have to load them up in medevacs and then I have to, stem and then I got to EMP with the ghost and I got to snipe with the ghost and then I got to cloak and then I got to nuke over here and then I got another drop down over here. It's
Yeah.
yeah, it's I don't know. I'm trying to trick my brain into enjoying like some of the more mundane stuff more.
Yeah. Well, it's a challenge. I don't know if have you messed around with the multitask trainer at all,
I have,
like
yeah,
the arcade?
I
Because
have.
for me, like um I really the thing that I got the most out of this arcade game, um, which also if you don't know, it's like you get the top corner of a map and you micro a ling that runs away from a probe. Oh no, it's the other way around. You micro a probe that runs away from a ling while you have a normal like three base setup and you do all your normal macro stuff. So that's what multitask trainer is. If you guys don't know, it's on the arcade. It's great. I recommend it. But the thing that thing taught me is that it gave me a sense of urgency in everything that I do. Because it's one thing to be like, "Oh, I'm doing it fast." And like you think you're doing it fast, but it's only when you have another task that is taking your attention to where you actually start doing that other stuff faster. Because I also think like part of like again, I like the bronze to GM stuff, but the bronze to GM stuff is also just like, yeah, you make this here, then you make this here. Like it doesn't have a tempo in the same way that a real game might have. Um, and I think the multitask trainer just alone from shifting from looking at one thing to looking at another thing, and going back and forth, like just that alone helped me a lot. But again, I am a simple Zerg. I like to multitask, but it is it is just one aspect of me. But I think urgency is an important thing that like I don't know. It's hard to teach. It's hard to teach this sense of like, yeah, you just got to do everything faster. Yeah, when you split three workers off to go into your gas geyser, that just has to be as fast as it can, right? You don't think about it because it's yeah, you click them into the thing. It's not a complicated thing, but in reality, it should be pretty fast. I don't know. That's my 2 cents.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, that makes sense. There is a certain level of urgency that you have to maintain throughout a standard ladder match, and even if you're not actually in a state of urgency during the match, like in the first, minute or so of the match, you still kind of feel that way. You kind of feel a little bit, you're kind of getting those nerves going, and it's just like, oh, it's the start of a new match. What are we going to see this time? And so
Yeah,
you'll see a lot of a lot of spam clickers, or people just kind of like warming their fingers up, like box clicking on workers, or
yeah,
just spamming between town hall and another building and stuff like that.
yeah. Well, I think this is also what I was trying to say is that I think it's easy to apply that sense of urgency to your drops and to your attacks, but it's sometimes it's harder to apply that urgency to like putting your buildings down on time, starting your upgrade. Like you really, it's just not as easy to visualize the urgency required for those, right? We can all see it in a replay where you like you just zoom into the NG bays and you're like, where is it? They're
Yep.
built. They're built. They're sitting there. It's a tempo thing and it's a timing thing and it's hard, man. Like it's challenging.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't know. It really does come down to kind of tricking yourself into finding your own like urgency for that kind of stuff.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, do you want to go into highlights, lowlights here?
Yeah, so my I'll go ahead and do the low light first.
Sure.
Now, this low light was more of a series of low lights, and this is kind of where I started to feel that real like stagnation. It was a stream on a Monday, and I for the entirety of like a 2 hour stream, I could not get a single thing right. And I'm very serious when I say this. I was so frustrated for the better part of 2 hours. It like there was a TVZ where my factory literally hovered above a barracks with a reactor for entirely too long. Like my Hellions were just late that game. Um, and I was really frustrated with that because that's something I do almost every single TVZ is you pick up the barracks and you put down the factory on the reactor and you start making Hellions. I went back to it and I'm just like, I don't understand, why is this hovering here? Like,
Yeah.
come on, I'm better than that. Then I had a TVP where instead of having my 311 hit at like 6:30, it hit at 7:30, which is a full minute late. Uh, and at that point, the Protoss had shield batteries at the third. They had Colossi out, and it literally just wipes up what I had. And I'm just like, I don't understand. Like I know I should be moving out sooner, and I feel like I should have more stuff if I'm pushing at 7:30. So I don't understand what's going wrong here.
Yeah.
And this trend just kind of continued for the entire night, where I was just missing my build orders constantly. There was so many like macro mistakes, and I became so focused on these like little mistakes that I was making in my own macro that I wouldn't focus on fights properly. So I was just taking really poor engagements, and it was genuinely a series of lowlights for that entire stream. I like at the end of it, I
Yeah.
was just like, guys, I cannot play StarCraft right now. I'm sorry. I have to log out for the night.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I totally relate to that too, where it's like it's not necessarily one huge thing. It's just like a couple really annoying little things. And I know I've had that too, where it's things that you just assume that you're gonna do automatically, and then you're like, wait, I thought I do this every game. Like, how did I not how did I not do this? And it can be really frustrating too because it's like this is supposed to be something like for me I will tell myself this is supposed to be something that I've already internalized and am beyond, like I feel like I am beyond forgetting zergling speed,
Yeah,
right?
you
But
kind of assume that it's going to be second nature for you at that point. Like it's
yeah,
automatic.
yeah. And this is a thing, so like we'll talk about this later because I think this is a goal thing, but I got link speed every game on time, You know, that was something I worked on to get that. To get Ling speed every game at 100 gas is something I worked on, right? But then when I changed my opener, you know, to something where your gas is a little different, I had to completely relearn how to get Zergling speed on time because it's just at a different time. And like I just don't think about it. And it's also one of these things where like if you're getting it off of the normal hatch gas pool, it's the same time every game, you know? And now that I'm mixing in other pool timings, it's not the same time. I have to be aware of it. So it takes something that I thought was completely automated and has completely restructured it in my brain. And it's just how I remember. I'm just like, oh yeah, I just would never think to get it at 4 minutes because I assume it's already done.
Yeah, definitely. Whenever I started, I learned originally I was doing like a three command center build for, excuse me, for TVP. And then I switched to 311, and you get like an early engineering bay and +1. And for the longest time, I was just forgetting +1 every single game because that's not a time where I got +1. Like I would
Yeah.
get +1 later. So just every single game I was pushing significantly weaker than I needed to be.
Yeah.
And it took rewire it really did take some rewiring of my brain, just like, okay, stem combat shields +1, stem combat shields +1, stem combat shields +1. And then, I then had to learn how to push at 630, but that's a different story.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Well, yeah, and I think it's kind of this weird relationship we have with our autopilot where it's like, yes, it's good that I can get this without thinking about it, but then sometimes I don't think about it enough and I completely forget that it exists. And
Yeah.
it's always a struggle and hey, I'm sorry you had a rough session, but I'm sure you'll find the strength to bounce back.
It's just one of those things that happen. Honestly, it was something that you've said before. It might have actually been in your YouTube video, but learning to be more kind and forgiving with yourself. Like I had to go back the next day and just be like, wow, like you just had a bad day, dude. Like it's
Yeah.
okay.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. One day in the scope of it, it's not gonna make or break you. But I mean, it certainly sucks.
Yeah,
Like it's
like in
not
the moment,
fun.
it's no fun. Yeah.
Yeah,
But
I don't
like
want
the
to. I don't want to say it's like it's an enjoyable process. It's not. It
no.
sucks, but like it happens.
Yeah, I did have to go back afterwards and just be like, it's okay. Like these things just happened.
Yeah, for sure.
But
Um, so like these were just all kind of different little things coming together. Are there certain takeaways you got from this, or certain things that have inspired your practice, or something like that?
yeah, actually, I've been I kind of that was definitely a night where I was rage queuing, so I kind of looked back and it was just like, okay, so maybe when we start hitting this kind of salty territory, maybe we just need to start taking more, BRBs, like just go on break a little bit more,
Yeah.
get up, walk around, stuff like that. I've actually been taking your advice and doing like a little bit more chatting stuff or, looking at other things.
Good.
But
Extending the time between those clicks.
yeah. um, but it is kind of hard to take something away whenever you're just having an off day,
Yeah.
It's because it's not because you know what's wrong, and you know the things that you could do to fix it, but you kind of can't bring yourself to do it that day. Like
Yeah.
it's just an off day, and you're going to have
Yeah.
those days.
Yeah. I think one of the most annoying things is that like the mistakes that you commit on those days are just like, yeah, don't do that. Like what don't do that. It's
It,
like,
it's
and
yeah.
you're in the game and you're like, well, I did it, so whoops. Like there's not like a big like aha moment. There's not like a big reveal on like, oh, this is the secret to winning this build. It's just like, no, don't do that.
Yeah. Well, and not only that, it's like it's things you already know not to do,
Yeah,
and but it happens anyways. And it could be
yeah,
because you're concentrating on other stuff. Maybe you're thinking about that last match and you're furious about that or something. But it's always something that you know, and it's always something that you do anyways
yeah,
because you're just not in it.
yeah. Well, and sometimes knowing that you shouldn't do it is the most painful part of it because you're
Yeah.
like, this is like day one stuff that I'm just not doing. And again, man, it's a bad day is a bad day, and you just gotta sometimes the ladder's just gonna dish it out to you, and you just gotta kind of sit there and take it, and it happens. But I'm sorry, buddy.
I mean, we bounce back. It's all good.
That's good. That's good. All right, tell me about the highlight then.
So this highlight is actually a loss, but I'm I'm actually fairly proud of it. In the moment, I was a little bit irritated with the game, but I went back, I watched it, and I really think that I played a very, very solid TVZ. So it was on Lightshade, and it was against a random player. And usually my protocol with that is just like, okay, I open double gas. If it happens to be, Protoss or Zerg, I pull out a gas and everything will just be a little bit later. That I'm fine with that.
Yeah.
So we go scouting. We find out that opponent's a Zerg player, so I'm just like, oh well, I guess I lose a little bit of mineral income, but that's fine. We'll pull out a gas and continue on like normally. Um, this is also an opponent who drone scouted, which is not something you see every day. And I might
From a
have,
random player, no less.
yeah. There was a part of me that was just like, oh, he doesn't know what he's doing.
Sure.
But oh, he also stole my natural gas, which was that was weird. I've never
Mm,
had a Zerg do that before, and I was just like, I okay, yeah, that can stay there for a minute. But I've been trying something new, and I've been doing like the Hellbat pushes that Maru and Percival have been doing recently, where you
yeah,
get a couple of Hellbats and Marines, and you just push across the map. And
that's with one medevac, right?
yeah, it's the one with one medevac.
Yeah,
I've
yeah, yeah.
been I've been experimenting a little bit with also adding either a Liberator or a Banshee with it as well, and it's actually pretty good. I think one of my coaches isn't too pleased that I'm doing it now because he wants me to do 1-1 timings, but I've been
No, you'll
enjoying.
you'll you'll definitely catch a lot of drone happy zergs in with those kind of builds.
Oh,
Always
I
like
already
you
have.
just yeah. I mean like and you don't have to do nothing. Just be like this guy probably has 50 drones. It's like all right,
Yeah.
well here we go.
All right, I'll just march across the map. This guy was actually fairly well prepared because he was already getting his fourth base. So when I killed his third, he just kind of moved the drones and I didn't really get many kills.
Yeah,
But it
yeah,
was
yeah.
still like, a significant amount of damage. From there, this game went crazy. Let me tell you, the entire gambit of TVZ was done in this match, and I'm very serious when I say this. There were infestors, there were vipers. I was sniping, I was throwing down EMPs. There were nukes, there were tank lines, like bioforces engaging with Ultraling Bane. Brood Lords came in at the end.
Oh
Like
wow.
I'm very serious when I say like this was almost everything that could be offered in TVZ. Like I was locked into my, fifth of the map. Opponent was taking tons of bases and I was pushing him back. This was the epitome of TVZ. And I was so psyched about it. I mean, well,
Yeah.
afterwards, after, the sting of loss,
Yeah,
wore
yeah, yeah.
off.
Of course.
But I like the Zerg would come, he'd kill a base. I'm like, I already have a command center. Put that shit down, and we're going to continue macroing. Um, you know, I would see ultras. I'm just like, don't worry about it. I've got snipes. I'm just going to take them all out in one go, and we'll be fine.
Yeah.
Vipers would come in and be like, oh well, I'm in trouble here because I can't shoot. I even had like an infestor hit me with a massive fungal and just watch Banes roll in and kill everything.
Yeah.
I am telling you, this was 30 minutes of the best Diamond TVZ I've ever played in my life.
Nice.
It was like I even went back, like I put in SC2 replay stats, and I looked at the heat map. There's barely a square inch of that map that wasn't like red.
Yeah. No, that's great, man. Sounds like a blast. Uh, I also think it's hilarious that like StarCraft, like the way you're describing it too, is like I'm already like overloaded with the amount of things that's happening, and I'm not even in the game. But it cracks me up in StarCraft too because like you can have a game that is the most like intense thing, but it actually focuses you more into it because of the wildness or the craziness. And I can tell you're in the zone, man. You're plugging away. You're just reacting and acting and taking control. And even if you're not in control, you still have an idea, of what the situation is. And that's great, man.
Yeah, the funny thing is, and this is incredibly vain of me to say, but I felt like I was in GSL. Like
Yeah.
I
Oh
felt like
yeah,
I
yeah,
was in
yeah.
GSL.
No, no, no. It's good. It's good to
it
feel like you're in
yeah.
GSL.
I mean,
I get that feeling every once in a while too, and it's fantastic.
I feel like it looked like, something a pro would play. Like not at that level, of course, but
Yeah.
it would
It
reminisce
had
of
all the
something.
pieces.
Yeah, it had all the pieces. But I mean, I look like, granted, I was irritated that I lost and I made some really stupid mistakes, but I was like, when I went back to that game, like I was happy with it. I
Yeah.
was I was pretty happy with it.
Yeah. Well, I also think that goes to show you that like even with the loss, I think you can still walk away from a productive loss, or walk away with like, hey, you know what? We gave it our best. And I think that is very valuable to hang on to. Uh and it's always the most satisfying. Um Me myself, I lost a series to someone, um, but it was a close series, and I was very happy with my performance. I gave it my all. I made my opponent work for it. Uh, no free dubs, no nothing here, and I can walk away from that and be like, yeah, it was good. I'm happy with it. We lost, but sometimes you lose. That's part of it.
I actually feel myself getting like hyped up just from describing the match.
Oh yeah, I could tell. I could tell. I'm in it. I'm in your shoes when you're describing it, and I also think that's just one of those great things about StarCraft where you can describe the tempo and the staging of the match, and I know exactly 100% what you're talking about.
Yeah. One more thing about that match though is I did get a nuke that killed 30 supplies worth of units.
Woo, it's nice.
That's one
I
of
I have
those that's one of
I don't
those
even
ones
know
I'm
what
gonna
that's
put up
like,
on
but
I'm gonna
sounds
put that
cool.
I'm gonna take a screenshot of it. I'm gonna print it out and put it on the fridge. That's gonna stay there for a little while.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. No, that's great. Congratulations.
Yeah,
Well
thank
played,
you.
sir. Always glad to hear it. Um, I don't know. Do you have anything else you want to add, or do you want to dive into the topic here?
Oh yeah, we can go ahead and dive into the topic of tonight. So we're going to be talking about goal setting, and we've been kind of dancing around it a little bit tonight as we described our ladder sessions, but I feel like this is such an incredibly important topic to discuss when we talk about lower league players and trying to get to that next rung of the ladder. um, you can sit and play StarCraft all you want, but if you don't have a series of goals in mind, there's a there's a chance that you're not going to be improving at a rate that is you're going to find satisfactory. Like you need to figure out what you want to do and how you're going to achieve those things. So, Dan, if you want to open up any kind of discussion, that any kind of notes you had.
Yeah, so I mean, I think there's a lot of different types of setting goals, and I think one of the big like separations would be the difference between long-term and short-term goals. But I think that they all have their purpose, and um, it's I don't know. Doing this, like thinking about this topic, has also allowed me to reflect upon the goals I had previously and how I approached them. And the thing that I kind of walked away from is that, like, I think the hardest thing for new players is understanding the priorities that you need to have and understanding which which things are actually worth focusing on and which are not. And I think having goals, even if the goals are given to you from someone else or given to you from yourself, um, having those goals makes the learning process feel a lot less overwhelming, right? Because in StarCraft, where we have 1,000 moving parts, all moving in different directions, it can be very difficult to be like, no, no, this thing is important that I work on. And having good goals can really just make it smoother and easier and more fun in a way, you know?
Yeah, I definitely agree. Being able to focus on any one moving part, making a goal for yourself, and then being able to, work towards that goal is incredibly important. Like for instance, I something that I've always struggled with is, supply block timing. Is like, um, a few years ago, I would very, very, very consistently always get 2+ minutes of supply block timing. And at some point I had to sit down and think to myself like, okay, this is not good. I'm supply blocked during very crucial times of a match. Like I could have, 170 supply of units at this time rather than, 120 or 140. So
Yeah.
at some point I had to set a goal and I had to say like, look, I want to start having my supply block timings down below 50 seconds. And so what I would start doing is I'd open up customs and I would just try to max out as quickly as possible. And I would check after every single one of those empty customs and see where my supply block timing was. And the moment I could start hitting it very consistently, in an empty custom, I would then start applying it to, ladder matches. And it's definitely different whenever you transition from these empty customs to ladder matches because, again, you have a lot more stuff going on in a ladder match rather than an empty custom.
Yeah.
But it still was a really good stepping stone to get to that next point where I could, get on the ladder and now, my supply block timings would be cut down to, like a minute 30. And then, I kept working at it and, minute 15. And now, I'm not going to say my supply block timings now are perfect by any means because I
Yeah.
definitely have messed up multiple times, but it helped me kind of get to a point where I can be happy with that. I'm not getting, supply block constantly. I can actually have 170 supply when I need it or be completely maxed out and pushing across the map.
Yeah. Yeah, well, and I had a similar goal too when I was starting out, but it was even more specific. It was just one supply block. So the 36-36 block is like the Zerg supply block. Like it is the one that every Zerg will hit. Uh, it just happens. It's part of how the builds work out. It's part of how it interfaces with like the adept coming across or the reaper coming across. Like that the 31 overlord or 30 overlord is like the one that ruins Zergs, you know? And 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 I promise you there are Zergs in Gold League who are in Gold League from that supply block. Like it is that powerful and it is so early. It hurts your larva so much. Um, I decided I am not going to get 36 blocked. So um, I would play games where my victory is depending on whether or not I hit the 36 block. And also, I was trying to throw in a third queen there because that's something else I would forget that's around the same time. So it was kind of a bonus. Third queen, 36, 31 overlord. That was it. That was the only goal I had. And again, sometimes shrinking the focus onto really specific things, it helped me a lot. And I'm not immune to the 36 block. I still get thrown off sometimes, but um, it made a big difference. And um, it's one of these very small goals, but I think a lot of the times these small goals can have really big effects, especially if you're talking about, um, gold, silver, plat. Like these margins are pretty wide for improvement. Um, and just getting that 36 block not happen is it's amazing. And I just it took work. It took work. Like I failed at it for a while. Don't get me wrong. Like I failed at it for a while, but I'm at a good spot with it now.
Yeah, I definitely relate. 31 or 46, depending on the build for Terran. It's it's that's one of the ones that plagued me forever. But I like what you said about kind of narrowing the focus down as much as possible. I feel like that kind of also gives you it's I feel like it's something that's easier to work for. Like,
Yeah.
you can have these big lofty goals in StarCraft 2, like I want my TVP win rate to be at 50%. Well, there's a lot that can go into that. Like, what do you plan on doing in order to get to that goal? And that's more of like a long term type of thing.
Yeah.
Um, but then narrowing it down to like, okay, well, it seems that I'm kind of struggling in the mid game. It seems that my timing is hitting late. Maybe I need to narrow it down to, this span of time. And you look at it some more and you realize, like, oh, wow, my second and third barracks are kind of late. Maybe I need to, narrow it down even further. Like, we're going to get second and third racks at this time. And it kind of, it's easier to perceive, I would say, rather
Yeah.
than, you know, having 50% win rate in TVP versus the second and third racks need to be down at this time. Like I
Yeah.
feel like narrowing the goals or narrowing the focus is incredibly important if you want to make good short-term goals to start working towards those long-term goals.
Yeah. Well, I also think that having a long-term goal, like if your long-term goal is like, I want to hit, 4K MMR, like that's fine. But you can have that goal, but you also have to understand that like you have to have a way to get to that goal, right? If you're just like, I want this MMR, it's like, okay, well, like what you have to be very specific about what you're going to improve upon to get there, right? And finding that specificity, I think sometimes, honestly, a lot of the challenge is game knowledge. Like if you just don't know what you should prioritize, it can be very difficult. Um, I managed to learn that from like Winter's angry coach and him like yelling at Diamond League at Diamond and Gold League players, like but it taught me priorities and it taught me that like yeah, maybe I shouldn't look at those lings and maybe I should just make more drones. Like it's and it's obvious to me now, but I totally understand that it's not for the younger people in the game, right? The other thing, oh, what was I gonna say? The other thing I'll say is that like there's certain goals, like it's hard for me to explain it, but like there are a lot of bad goals that you can set for yourself that like just don't that aren't effective. And I think a lot of it is like, I'm gonna win every game today. That's a little exaggerated, but it's that kind of thing where it's like, but you can't control that. Like like you have no control over if you're gonna I mean you do, but like you shouldn't.
Yeah,
And you gotta
it's
ride it out.
yeah, it's the same with like having a short-term goal of getting to this MMR. Like
Yeah.
it's not focused. There's no the only fail condition there is you don't make it to that MMR. Why didn't you make it to that MMR? There's so many different reasons as to why. Maybe you got cheese every single game that night. Maybe you just didn't play that many games. Maybe your timings were off. Like, yep. I this is something that Dan and I have talked about before, but don't set short-term MMR goals.
Yeah.
It's bad practice. Don't set a certain win rate or anything like that. Focus on things you can control.
Yeah. And it's there's so having a goal that is like measurable too, I think is also very important. Um I so I'm gonna drop some vocabulary on you, Will. Are you ready? I haven't prepared you for this, so
I didn't
it's okay.
study. I didn't study, so
So I'll be honest, I did a little prep. I broke out my sports psychology textbook, which has been sitting on
ooh,
my shelf. Yeah, I took one sports psychology class. But we did do goal setting stuff. And honestly, a lot of sports psych that you learn in or the way I learned it in this class is like you learn this stuff and then you're like, I get it. That makes sense. Because it's stuff you kind of already experienced, whether like you've been on teams before or like you've been in group settings where there's goal setting and stuff like that. But like, and it's a lot of it is just you learn the vocab for stuff that you kind of already understand. So um, I'll just give you this one. So outcome goals. An outcome goal is based on a competitive result, right? So an example would be an outcome goal is I want to win GSL this year, right? Or like I'm going to compete and get WCS top 8 or something, right? That's a very specific outcome goal, and that's typically a goal that you would put like on the season, right? Or like on a longer term thing, right? Um, so then there's another one, which would be performance goals, which are more related to your individual self and the results within that, right? Um, so if you're like, I'm looking to improve my PVT to this percent, or if I'm trying to work on my supply block timer, these are all related to the individual athlete's performance, right? Um, and you set your objectives based on separate from your competition, right? Because your competition can do whatever, right? And then the other type of goal is a process goal, which is more focused on these individual actions, right? So I call these focus goals, but it's more like when I'm doing my the example in the book was from swimming, but it's like when I'm swimming, I'm gonna try to get my arm fully extended for every stroke, right? To get the most power. I'm gonna focus on something physical within my performance, and it could be something as simple as making SEVs or making injects or something like that. So I think having an overarching goal is great, but it's the little goals that kind of get you there, right? And those
Hmm.
might change weekly, those might change daily, but it's something that you kind of have to just see if it can benefit you, you know? And every goal in those different categories has a purpose, but also like is bad for other things and good for other things. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, definitely. I will say with the focus goals, there's 100% going to be times that you can't meet those focus goals. Um, the reason I'm saying that is because like Aret used to be extremely big into focus goals. Like he would even have a spreadsheet where he would, tally out what he did per game. And Maynard did that before him, and I'm sure somebody did that before Maynard. But if it was something simple like I want, my robo to go down at this time, there were some games where he simply just could not get that robo down in time because of something that, the opponent did. So I think it kind of goes back to um, just understanding that I lost my entire train of thought. I apologize. Um,
Right.
just sometimes it's like you're not going to hit that 100% every single time. You
Yeah.
can in like an empty custom, sure, but as you're playing through the ladder, your opponent is going to do something unpredictable. He's going to mess up your plan in some way because that's just the nature of StarCraft.
Yeah.
Um, but every single time you go into a game, your objective should be that, and you should try to obtain that as much as possible. Like honestly, if you go into a game with that, with a goal as like I want to get my spire at 6 minutes. I don't know if that's reasonable or not, but
Maybe.
um, we'll you know your Terran opponent's going to send like some massive Hellbat attack, and you're going to spend a lot of money trying to get lings. You're going to spend a lot of money, remaking drones. You're going to spend a lot of attention on queens trying to make sure that this, doesn't happen. And it comes down at like 6:30, we'll say.
Yeah.
Like at the very least, when you exit that game, you can say, well, I didn't get that goal, but I really tried hard to do it despite what my opponent was doing. And I
Yeah.
feel like that's kind of something important to keep in mind when you have those focus goals. It's like you're not going to hit it every time, but you damn well can try to.
Yeah. So like I've thought about this before too. I really like focus goals, but I've kind of moved away from it a little bit. And again, I was thinking about this once we decided on this topic, but um, it's one of these things where I feel like in each matchup, my focus goals are so wildly different from one another in each specific matchup that like it's harder for me to set a focus goal for a ladder session because in reality, I would be setting three different focus goals for each matchup and potentially playing none to all of them, all of those matchups, right? So for me, it became a little overwhelming as far as trying to set these goals all the time and also just evaluate my performance on, hit or miss, like yay or nay, did I hit the focus goal or not? Which is why I've kind of adopted a more loose feel towards my improvement. Um, and I think I found more value in these really specific focus things earlier on in my growth as a player, like in the lower leagues. Like definitely in platinum, it was still very helpful. But even in diamond, it started to get every situation I found myself in diamond started to be its own thing.
Mm-hmm.
Like it started to be its own story or whatever you want to call it, like its own situation that I can't blindly apply things to. And I kind of miss being able to set a focus goal for all three matchups because it was nice and I could really focus on it. Um, but I think that's also a lot of it too in Diamond is I'm also trying to work on my decision making, right? And I don't know if I can come up with a good focus goal for decision making other than like know what's happening
Well,
or have a good guess on what's happening, like because sometimes sometimes you don't know, sometimes you half know and you get away with it. I really don't know.
I've kind of I've had a similar issue um, with the decision making one. Usually, what I would try to do is just see how close I was in my assessment. Like if I
Yeah,
get a Reaper up into a Protoss base and I see Twilight Robo, you know, the immediate assumption is going to be, a gateway man all in.
yeah,
Um, so at the end of the game, I just want to see how close my assessment was. Like, did I make the right call? Was he going to, charge that all in me? Was it going to be blink? Like,
yeah,
yeah, for stuff like that, it's just kind of like how close can you get? And I don't personally keep, super dedicated focus goals anymore.
yeah,
Mostly it's kind of like a lot of the time it's like secondary stuff. It's like stuff I have in mind, but I'm not really super keeping track of it.
yeah,
It's not a formal thing, and I feel like if I made it a formal thing, it's probably the moment I'm just not gonna be able to obtain that goal
yeah,
because I'm gonna set something for TVZ, and then every single game's gonna be like a roach rush.
yeah. And I don't know if this is just the result of like the calibers of players we face where like they have a little more execution in the things they want to do to you, you know what I'm saying? um but having I think, did I lose my thought? um but having a game where it's gone.
Man, this is just the night where we're just having brain farts.
No, it's this is a it's I think it's a topic that like we've all like been in, like we've
Yeah.
all had relationships with it. So like I'm trying to remember like what did I think in the past and what am I thinking right now? um what was I gonna say? All right, it's gone, it's gone. Did I write it down? No.
Ah, damn. Well,
It's all right.
I guess something
Go
that we
ahead.
could, something that we could go into is just how do you figure out what goals to set? Because I feel like that's something that like new players are going to struggle with. It's something that I definitely struggle with because setting priority for things that you should be focusing on is hard. Like,
Yeah.
how do you figure out what you need to set goals about, and how do you go about setting those goals?
Yeah. Um, yeah, I think that's a really good way to put it because again, without the knowledge of like early game stuff, knowledge, setup, like it's really hard. And you can play and you can, you know, you get Twitch chat telling you to spend your money and make stuff and it's like, well, yeah, but like it's more specific than that, you know, and it's like, yeah, spending your minerals would put you in a better spot, but if you don't know why or you don't know like the
Or
important keys,
what to
the
spend it on.
yeah, the important keys to effectively spending your money, you're not gonna get. You're just gonna your tires are just gonna spin nonstop, and you're gonna get nowhere. Um, Again, I got a lot of this knowledge from watching streams and things like that, but also just watching coaching and stuff. And
Oh yeah.
I think the biggest takeaway for me is that um, if I could just give like blanket advice to lower league players, is that the first 5 minutes of the game is so incredibly important and so like it is exponentially like I don't know if I have a word that's better than exponentially, but it is exponentially times 1,000 more important than the rest of the game. Is the first 5, even 7 minutes of the game, and getting those first 5 minutes solid, I guarantee you will win you games. And sometimes you might even win them by accident just by like I remember this in like gold or even like low plat where it's like, oh, he's doing this, it's like, oh, good thing I had like 6 safety roaches because it's built into my build, and
Yeah.
for no other reason, like I have these roaches for no other reason, but I just win because like I had it more together in the early game than my opponent. And the weight of those early game decisions is huge. Um, I also, I, I don't know. Like sometimes I'll pop into lower league streams, you know, just because I like to watch and I like to see. But there's also this hilarious thing that happens in certain gold league games where um, the game is decided, but it takes another 14 minutes for the game to play out because
uh,
both players are just trying to like bash each other in the head and they both keep doing it but not like completely doing it, and then it just like it yo-yos back and forth for literally potentially like a 24-minute game that's already been over. But
oh
it's
well,
just funny because
hang on now. It sounds like you're describing my games right now.
no, it's different, it's different, but you know, it's just funny because it's like I would have left this game, but you know, it's you just watching people bop each other on the heads, and I still remember it too. I was watching Pig do coaching. This was a long time ago. I don't even remember, but like Pig when he watches his students replays, it's great. So what he does is he fast forwards through them times 8 speed. He gets a feel for the entire game, and then he goes back and then he does the coaching, and then he's like, all right, we don't need to watch the rest of this. And there's like 18 minutes left, and it's like, yeah, no, we don't like we don't need to watch the rest of it.
Yeah, it's actually that's I've been watching a lot of IOTIS recently with Hearthstone,
Oh yeah,
and
yeah.
that seems to be the case every single, like with a lot of lower league players. It's just like it's, a 20-minute long game, and Hearthstone's already made his conclusion by the 10-minute mark, and it's just like, I know you're going to die. Like,
Yeah.
or, you know, like you should be dead right now, but your opponent's having a little bit of struggle here. But these mistakes up to this point are the reason why I think you should be dead right now.
Yeah.
It's
Well,
just
and I
like,
also think like
no, go ahead.
lethal, there are many lethal mistakes you can make in a StarCraft game, right? And a lot of the times you'll make them without realizing it. But once you understand that it is a mistake that is like worth the cost of the game, it starts to become a little clearer. Um, I also think that like the best thing I did is just watching coaching of players at my level. Um, and because a good coach will understand the priorities, right? Because it's not necessarily, I mean, it is specifically the priorities for that player, but it's also the priorities for the league, right? And each league has its own priorities and its own um, things you should know, right? Or you should have a beat on, right? Because like you're not gonna ask a gold league player to look at gas timings, right? You're just gonna ask the gold player, okay, one base, two base, three base, like that's it, like after that, who knows? Who knows? Like the gold player, your opponent doesn't even know what's going to happen. How are you supposed to know? But you can at least count the command centers, right? And that's a requirement of that level and having that understanding. So it's going to change. It's going to ebb and flow all the time.
Yeah, absolutely. Speaking of which, we were talking about coaching here a little bit, and watching other players get coached, and I feel like that's definitely that should be an important part of goal setting. It doesn't necessarily need to be a coach, I would say. I've actually, sparring with people like Helium Bunny or, anybody from NSGSL, any of my friends, like just sparring with them has kind of given me a better understanding of like what I could be doing better. Cause, you get a second pair of eyes on a match and it's easier to actually observe a match if you're not in it. It really is.
Yeah,
This part of the reason I like casting so much is because you get to see everything and every little mistake.
yeah,
Um, but it does help to have a second set of eyes, be able to like look over a replay and just be like, oh yeah, what are you doing here? This is something that could be cleaned up, and you could be looking at the same thing and just like I didn't realize this was a mistake at all.
yeah, yeah. Or even if you're practicing with someone who's a little bit better than you, and they're like, you know. Most Zergs have a couple more units on their second attack.
Yeah,
It's like, oh yeah, no, I'm bad at injecting. Like, but like it wouldn't really, I don't know that because I don't play myself from that angle. I don't experience the game from the other side, but they can tell, and they can tell, it's might not be um as tight as it needs to be. But it's it's always nice. Yeah, I think it's always nice to have another perspective. And um I think this is one of the challenging things about StarCraft is that there's so much self coaching that is involved, and
Mhm.
you as a player are constantly restructuring your priorities. And um it's fun, but it's also pretty challenging. It's definitely fun when, like, I still remember the days when I was just winning every game in Gold League. Oh my God. What a time. What a time to be alive, to be just winning almost everything because I just started doing a couple like really good macro things and steamrolling my opponents. So it's definitely attainable, but it's also just it takes focus.
Yeah, absolutely. Um, yeah, honestly, I don't know what I would do if I didn't have practice partners or coaches to help me get an eye on you know what I could be improving on my play, and then they're like the next step being like I need to set a goal to do better in this area. I mean, there's a lot of value that can become from like learning to watch your own replays and coming up with
Yeah.
your own goals on your own. I feel like that's still a very important part of improving as a StarCraft player, but there is just a immeasurable amount of um, value out of just having another person to be like, hey, this might be where you're going wrong, maybe you need to like, here's what you could be doing better.
Yeah. Well, I also think the thing that I tried to do when I was setting goals, and then still what I try to do is I try to find the goal that gets me the most bang for my buck, right? So, like, what's one thing I can focus on that will potentially influence every matchup, right? And when you're in the lower leagues, there are plenty of things that um, definitely influence that. And, um, just getting link speed every game at 100 gas, it's easy, right? But it's also something that everyone forgets because it's just one of those things you got to remember. But I guarantee you, if you're a Zerg who forgets link speed every once in a while, if you were to erase that mistake from all of your games, I guarantee you would win games from it. Like it, it just sometimes happens when you have something automatically it is worth its weight in gold, especially as you start to to grow and develop as a player. And um, it's I rarely forget ling speed. Again, I do if I do a weird opener or something like that, or I do a weird gas timing for some reason, but rarely do I go back to, oh, I just completely forgot ling speed. Like it's in there. It's in my brain somewhere, you know?
Yeah, I mean, you're still gonna make a mistake every once in a while. I know there's definitely times whenever I forget stim. That actually reminds me, I need to set a goal for combat shields. I don't. Where's my?
Oh
I
yeah.
need to write this
Classic
down.
Terran. Classic Terran mistake.
But yeah, it is one of those things that kind of gets. It just becomes automatic. Like it's not even something that you think about, and that's kind of the nice thing about starting to obtain some of these short term goals is that the more you practice it, the more automatic it becomes, and the less you have to actively think about it, and then that leaves room for new stuff that you can be looking at. Like I've already figured out that like stem has to be at this time. What's the next step? What's the next logical step? It's combat shields in my case, but
Yeah. Well, you just got me thinking about this too. Is like I just realized that like probably about 90% of the time I make the 30 overlord to dodge the 36 block that I was just talking about. I am consciously thinking about it. Like I am so aware of that supply block. It has not become automatic because I still hit it and it still plagues me. But I'm better at it. But I see my supply at like 28 out of 36 and I'm like I got to get ready for that 31 overlord. I got to get prepared. And this is the other thing too I want to mention about goal setting is that like I think most of the goals we've given as examples are all like improvement based, but like if your chief enemy is like ladder anxiety, you can set your goals around that, right? And I think I mentioned this before, but it's like, yeah, just set a goal to play 3 games, and that can be a very powerful tool. And it's a little separate from some of these like timing oriented and upgrade oriented goals, but I still think there's a lot of value to using it for that. Or even if your goal is like, hey, I want to play more, how do I trick myself into just playing more games or something?
yeah, I'm actually immensely glad that you mentioned that because I feel like that was something I wanted to mention but completely forgot about. Yeah, as somebody who used to really suffer from ladder anxiety, it that genuinely does help. Just set, you know, the 3 games a day thing that I mean it genuinely helps. There's not really much more I can say about it. You can increase it over time, and you get your tolerance for the ladder anxiety. You start to feel it less and less. I mean,
Yeah.
for some people it doesn't completely go away, but it's manageable. It's almost like excitement at that point. Like you're excited to kind of get into the ladder and see what you're going to see this day. But
Yeah.
I'm really glad that you mentioned that one.
Oh yeah. No, it's a good one. Um, I don't know if I have any other like major things. I just have like some general like goal setting things. If I can throw them in there.
Yeah, go ahead.
So one of the things I wrote is that I think it's really important to set goals that are challenging but also realistic, because you do want to give yourself the ability to give yourself the W. Like you don't want to set your goals to something that is impossible to obtain because you won't do it and you won't feel good about it. And part of effective goal setting is getting goals that are within that Goldilocks zone of challenging but not impossible, because those are the ones that really kind of elevate you to the next level.
Yeah, absolutely. Um, I've definitely been guilty of creating impossible goals before and not feeling good about it, or maybe even making goals that are just too advanced for my level of play, and then feeling like, well, that's kind of makes me feel like crap that I can't obtain this. Maybe I should just, stop with this goal when realistically all I need to do is just like tone it back
Yeah,
and, do something a little bit more reasonable.
yeah. And the other thing too is that like these long-term and short-term goals they all kind of work together, right? So
Yep.
if your overarching goal is I want to be better at StarCraft, you need a lot of like stepping stones, right? You can't just have your goal be like, I'm gonna be better. It's like, oh, well, like you have to be specific about the things that will get you there, right? Even if it's something like, I'm gonna watch all my replays. I'm gonna, try to get this build order practiced as hard as I can before I take it to the ladder, right? Like, um, and there has to be a clear path because without the path, it's just the goal is just kind of sitting there and it's potentially meaningless, right? If there's no clear route, you
Yeah,
know?
I think that's the hardest part about making a long-term goal. I mean, especially starting off from a long-term goal. Like you can have this, goal of like I want to make Masters 3 by the end of the year. Well, and what are those steps that you're going to take in between? And you break it up into goals, and then you have to break those goals up into goals if, this long-term thing is big enough. So
Yes.
like for me, I want to be Diamond 1 by the end of the year. But, what are the things that I need to do in the meantime? Well, we could break it down into, like all of the different matchups, and then from there break it down even further. Like I need to have this low of a supply block timing. I need to be hitting at these times. And breaking down those goals is incredibly important because that allows you to focus on, you can focus on each goal one at a time. And it kind of, you're not eating the elephant all at once.
Yeah. And it's goals on top of goals on top of other goals. But that's also speaks to the complexity of StarCraft, right? And it's a lot. It's a lot, man.
It really is. There's a lot to this game. There's just a lot to get in this game.
Yeah. Well, and I was thinking about this too, because this kind of just allowed me to reflect upon like the things I did. I used to take notes on like every game I played. Like when I was in Plat, man, I would take notes on everything, you know? And it's something I was thinking about where I was like, man, I should at least kind of try to do that again because it was a level of analysis that like I haven't reached in a while because I don't know, maybe it's because of the volume of games I've played, but it's also like I play games where I'm like, where it's like, oh yeah, that one fight that you took, you just shouldn't have done that.
Yeah.
And I'm like, yep, yeah, I shouldn't have done that. All right. And then I just kind of throw that game in the back of my mind, just be like, yeah, don't take that fight. All right. And it's gone, right? But within that game, there are still a lot of things that I probably could have improved that have nothing to do with that fight, whether it's positioning, whether it's just the basic macro stuff. Like, there's information in those replays because I caught myself doing this where I had some big wins. I had some big wins and I like analyzed them like off stream because I wanted to just wanted to see. I really wanted to see. And then I'm like, man, there are some huge holes that like I just thought, I was fine with that kind of stuff, like basic stuff that I thought I was quote unquote beyond. Um so it's interesting because I'm starting to be like maybe I should just maybe give it a try on like that kind of analysis because I also feel like I'm at a point in my gameplay where I feel competent at a lot of things, but I also don't feel um, as focused as I could have as I have been in the past where it's like easier to set these goals. So I don't know. I'm thinking of diving into the analysis and just pulling the trends from there because I'm sure I will see patterns once I start doing it. But again, I just do it very sporadically, so my information of myself is not as it's not as illustrated.
Right. Yeah. I mean, yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And it's funny that you say that because it's something that I've actually recently restarted as well. Like I've
Yeah.
been taking notes like off stream. Um, thinking about games that I had played. Even during streams, whenever I'm doing replay analysis stuff, like I've started pulling, a notepad up every once in a while and like, typing it down so that chat can even see it.
Yeah.
Um, and I feel like it actually is super important because you like, believe it or not, note taking actually helps with goal setting. So
Oh yeah, for
like
sure.
it really does help because you start to see trends within your notes. You start to realize, oh well, clearly I'm not taking the right positioning whenever I'm taking these fights, and I don't have sight on an opponent's army. So maybe these are things that I should start paying attention to.
Yeah, and I think there's a lot of value there to recognizing trends within your own gameplay. Because again, part of me back in the day of getting the 36 block is I realized it happened in like 80% of my games. And I'm like, well, if I fix this one thing, it fixes 80% of these games. So that's a pretty good, return on value.
Yeah.
Um, but yeah, man, it's ongoing. Um, yeah,
Yeah. Any other thoughts before we call it a night tonight?
I don't I don't think so. I'm I'll tell you my long-term goal is I want to be a solid Diamond 1 player. That's what I'm gunning for at the moment. I don't have a time frame on it, but that's the next like plateau I want to reach is just solid Diamond 1. Um, I still need to figure out how I'm going to get there. So again, I still need to put in the work and figure out all that jazz, but that's the goal for me. That's the big one. And we'll see how it goes.
Yeah, mine's currently just I'm not even going to focus about solid diamond one. I just want the border, and then we can
Yeah,
focus on being solid diamond one. So
sure.
that's mine right now. We just
No, that's
we
good.
at least get the ceiling up there. The floor can come later.
Oh yeah, definitely. Just gotta graze the tip of it, and you'll be fine.
Exactly. All right, guys. It's been about 2 hours. This has been quite a long and really riveting podcast. Honestly, we love doing this kind of stuff. Uh, Dan, you have anything that you would like to share?
I have my normal setup. I have a link tree down there. You guys can find me on Twitch. I am streaming mostly ladder stuff. I also love talking about improvement and that sort of thing. I also have a YouTube where there's, other StarCraft mentality related content. Um, but yeah, thanks for listening. I really love coming on this show. It's always a pleasure to have these talks, and it's always a good discussion. So thanks
Yeah,
again.
you're a great friend and a great co-host, man. There are my socials down in there. Let's see. Climb. We are on Apple Podcasts, Spotify. We do have YouTube videos of the VODs. The podcast versions will come next week. Anything else? Suppose I should find somebody to raid. Anyways, guys, thank you so much for hanging out. We do appreciate it. We hope you have good luck and tons of fun on the ladder, and we will see you later. Take care, guys.